I want to structure our meeting today in a comprehensive way. So first, I'll just tell you a little bit more about it. How the universe is structured at the level of energy, so that it will be easier for you to let go and relax. Because this process is at the core of everything I demonstrate and talk about. It's all about relaxation and expansion. And so that there would be even more chewing gum for our brains, so that he would... It's better to adopt this position, this approach to practices. We still need to remind ourselves a little about what reality is and what a person is within it. It all started with the fact that, and this is known both from the scriptures and from awareness of people who practice, it all started with the fact that from the original unmanifested, as it's believed, what is considered emptiness is actually not emptiness. It is energy, Kali Adakali. You can call it the energy of power, or you can refer to it as dark matter. Physicists are also hunting for it. And they see that there is some kind of force, some kind of power that affects the material world. And it is not recorded by any instruments or sensations in any way, only by its effects. So when physicists decided to count again, they also missed the matter in our space, because matter moves according to such laws and rules that we should see more. There should be more of it, but no one sees or perceives it. And this is nothing other than that very primordial original essence that is eternal and incomprehensible, from which a pillar of light emerged. And after a long time, though in reality it's not time but rather a personal desire, will once again plunge back inside. To some extent, we can draw a very primitive analogy. It's like the birth of a child from a mother. And that's why Kali has a feminine nature. In the scriptures, in the books, and in the stories of practitioners. And it turns out that the entire universe, despite the fact that everything that is manifested is called Shiva, meaning he is the original cause of everything. Still, he emerged from Kali, from Ada Kali, meaning from the feminine aspect. Here, what happens next? This original one appears. He is absolutely whole. He is absolutely identical to himself. There. It's impossible to want anything because everything is absolutely the same. The highest form of mobility. So when I say fire, we burn and flow, we burn, burn, burn. What is fire? The highest degree of mobility of that consciousness from which everything else begins to form. And so, when the original manifested as a conscious being, not as this hidden chaos of Kali, but specifically as a conscious entity, as a certain structure, a certain form, the first form. The only thing he could do next was to study himself, because it was impossible to perceive anything around him, as the nature of this Kali is imperceptible. And even when we search for it at the tips of our fingers, at a small distance in the form of a whirlwind, when we search for it in the form of a whirlwind in front of the joints of our arms and legs, we can only perceive some kind of influence. And if you ask any practitioner what color she is, they will all say, well, she's black. What is black? That's when you don't perceive anything, the absence of light. And so, when the original began to comprehend himself, suddenly it turned out that there was nothing to perceive because everything is absolutely identical. When everything is absolutely identical, there is no desire, no need, no passion, there is nothing. Because wherever I direct my attention, I will perceive the same thing. And so his next action was transformation. In different religions, scriptures, and treatises, it doesn't matter where we get the information from, there is still something that produces this original. In Christianity, it's the word. The word is a wave, meaning it's a wave-like movement. If we take some ancient tradition of Egypt, then it's transformation. This movement was, meaning it's also a wave. It's just that different words are used, but the essence is the same for all. And this something was the division on itself and itself. But at the same time, the fullness of the entire process didn't diminish because of this. That is to say, the whole remained whole, but it became two. It didn't become more or less, it wasn't lost. It's very difficult for the brain to grasp. You need to feel it as something absolute, dividing. into two absolutes. But nature remains identical. The only thing that changed there is the form of movement. One remained in its original state, while the other energy began to swirl around it like a vortex. And this vortex is called a shaft. So the vortex in the shaft, these vortices then became more and more numerous, but that was later. As soon as it divided, it had its first object of desire, the first object of longing. So, nothing special. He moves differently, dancing, captivating. That's why it's believed that it's the feminine energies that draw us into illusions, that pull us into realities. But we have nothing but illusions, because they are the only thing we can grasp. It is absolute in itself, and it is self-identical. So we need something somewhere for our attention to latch onto, and then the game begins, then the dance begins. It's neither good nor bad. It's still a dance. And so when something unlike itself appeared, the first impulse of desire for connection appeared. And this connection, it happened right here. What triggered the emotion? The feeling. This feeling expressed itself as an explosion of energy in all directions. And if we take physics and astronomy, then basically we read about the same processes. So there was initially something compressed into a point, and this compressed something began to unfold. In physics, by the way, if you read serious literature, not a school textbook, but serious literature, there are no words like that. The word explosion, there is expansion, a very rapid yet expansion. And this is exactly how the further development of that is described, of the original primacy. Depending on who counted how and who calculated what, we have different data, but they all share the same essence. So this original energy, having manifested and divided then upon reuniting, experienced this surge. It spread out. At the same time, it neither decreased nor increased. It simply changed its form. And one way or another, the first division happened into Shiv, Tatev. Then they counted 32. Then they counted 64. But it was all from the same fontanelle. First, one channel flowed, then the channel divided into 5, and those 5 divided further. We can see these processes even in the discharge of lightning, like from one thick bundle, then all the tiny, tiny little lightning bolts spread out. This process is constantly being replicated. It's always right in front of us. We take the trunk of a tree. It's big. Sometimes, by the way, 2 trunks appear at once, but we have one root system. And then these separations lead to a multitude of self-similarities. And this is called fractality. Our entire universe is made up of fractals. Our entire universe is constantly self-replicating, self-copying. Yes, it can copy itself, not perfectly, not flawlessly. It can self-replicate in more primitive forms. For example, let's take the movement of liquid through pipes, and we'll take the movement of electricity through wires. I will periodically talk about electricity because I already said I dedicated a lot of time specifically to studying how electricity moves, and only when I started engaging in practices, it was believed, and I basically agree with this, that electrical energy is the last form of matter before entering into the energetic human bioenergies. You could say, so electric current is the last form of energy that is available to us on a material level. That's it, then the magic begins. The movement of energy and fractality, it is constantly self-similar, just like how liquid moves through pipes. Electricity moves in the same way. But electricity involves more complex processes. There are more laws at play. There are fewer processes in water, but the essence is the same. And in electricity, there is also something called a water hammer. So if we, for example, pull sharply, the switch, the resistance, the circuit rushes into infinity. These are fractions of a second. These are transitional processes. No one ever talks about them in school. They don't study them. But in transitional processes, everything is very similar. When it initially split into 5, these 5 primary energies, we also find these energies within ourselves in the practices that I demonstrate. So it's fractal. We are similar to him by our nature, by our essence, and we are just like him. Why? Because apart from him, there is nothing else here. And from what he created from himself, forms and energies, no one else, emerged from this. It's all the same him. It's all the same originally. It's all the same being that exists both in its originally manifested form and in its scattered form throughout the universe, across creation, in the space of Kali. There is actually a term called the egg of the universe. So this is the volume that this splash has taken up. And this splash, it first spreads out. And if we believe the scriptures, if we believe the practices, if we believe the physicists, as long as it is still spreading, meaning as long as it is still unfolding. But there will definitely come a moment when it starts to pull back together. And at the moment when it returns to its original state and pulls in absolutely everything, all the shadows, all the illusions, all the forms, all the particles, it won't matter at all what we were doing here. Absolutely none. The only thing that matters is how we, being in a more primitive form of the fractal, spend our time here. As part of my tradition, I invite people to spend time here with joy. In order to spend time here with her joyfully, you need to be similar to the one who can experience pleasure to the highest degree, who is absolute in their pleasure, who is absolute among us, original Shiva. So we should take him as an example. And so when he divided into 5 tattvas, from these 5 tattvas, the creation of everything began. In these processes, for example, in the upcoming retreat and in the practices that I demonstrate, we immerse ourselves in one way or another. So what is it? This is will. This is intention. This is love. This is sincerity. And this is conscience. 5 energies, 5 divine energies. What else is there? These are the primordial elements, the earth, beneath our feet, the water, that manifests between the hemispheres of the brain, fire, air, ether. Also 5 tattvas. And these are all fractals of the original process. We just approach the study of these movements, the study of these flows from different angles. And so when a person reaches these moments within himself and releases them, he begins to approach the original being according to his capabilities, which always exists in the form in which it appeared. From what I've just shared, we can highlight several key points. If you neglect them, if you sit down on a chair and think, okay, I'm going to start meditating just a little bit more, great, nothing will change. It won't work like that. Yes, you will get some effects. You will receive some basic bonuses just because your energy will start moving faster. But with those same basic bonuses, you can get, for example, from your physical body. But if you start eating healthily, you'll have more energy and you'll be able to hit something harder. If you're flying towards a wall, right? Well, or return faster if a wall is flying at you. But if we are talking specifically about transforming the space around us, there are mechanisms that cannot be ignored. Well, you can't get rid of them. No way. And the first, outwards, and most important thing is that we are all particles, originally. That's it. Whoever tells you about demons, angels, about how we owe something to someone, about having a creator and God. Yes, there is a being known as Brahma. This wonderful being creates these worlds where we observe an infinite number of scenarios, an infinite number of cartoons. It performs its function, but its function is not to punish us, nor to make us slaves. His functions do not include forcing us into anything. This illusion that we are about to be pushed somewhere, forced into something, is not true. That's not how it works. Only by manifesting from within, according to the principles of the primordial, do we begin to shape the space around us. What is most important, when we do this, we need to realize that we are surrounded by others just like us. They are just in different states of sleep. And believe me, if a bear is hibernating in its den in the middle of winter and you stand there and knock on it, in the tail area he may wake up. And the same thing happens with people who, through practices and exercises, build their potential, gain power, and start tying knots with other people. Another person might turn out to be that very bear who wakes up, remembers that they are primordial, and ties you up instead. Why will this happen? Because he will be sincere in his process. He will be completely immersed in it. He will be outraged. And he will be just like you, primordial. That's why I keep asserting and explaining why we don't interfere with others' lives. So, from what I've shared, what do we get? Each of us is a piece, though, of the primordial. How does it sound in Sanskrit? Har Har Mahadev. Each of us is Mahadev. When I start to feel like I'm being carried away somewhere, when sprouts of discontent and outrage begin to grow within me, when someone is doing something wrong, I say, Har Har Mahadev. So each of us is Mahadev. If this Mahadev, being in a state of semi-awareness, half asleep, half crazy, is doing something, let him do it. Let him... I don't interfere with him doing it. But if he comes to me and says, hey, could you possibly... I'll say, yes, I could. As much as I could, that's what I did. And these are the basic fundamental moments. So, when you are building your life path, and I know very well that people come to practice not because they want to be fulfilled. Yes, no, they just want to improve their life situation, to get what they can't seem to get, to heal, to fix, to obtain, to create. So in order to create, and that's okay, there's no problem with that. But if this person neglects the laws, the nature of the manifested itself, then with these tools, you can end up cutting off your own fingers, because these are serious tools. The nature of Mahadev, the nature of the original, how he created all that we are in right now. What did he do for that? He revealed himself, he overflowed. We can imagine a situation where he will start demanding something from us, but actually from himself. Absolutely right. So as we approach his capabilities, his omnipotence, his power, we can throw a bunch of words around. We also have to accept this. Accept it as a given, that if we claim to be the God of our reality and nothing else, the creator of our reality, then we must constantly give, constantly overflow. But since we are fractal, and we have some factors that I call constraining structures, that's why it's important to be a conscious person. So what do I mean? If someone comes to me, for example, and asks for 100 rubles, it's really not a problem. And I don't care why he's asking me. I'm not the one who will judge him. I'm not the one who will determine his life because I determine my own life. I don't need to determine his life. I'll give it to him. This is not a loss for me. Not at all. But if someone comes to me and asks for 100,000 rubles, I'll honestly tell him, well, no, I don't have that kind of money. And that will be fine. This is very important. Keep that awareness, the ability to say yes, and the ability to say no, not because not original, but because we still have constraining factors. And that day will come when someone comes to me, or to each of you, and says, listen, here's the thing, can you lend me 100,000? When someone borrows money from me, I always give it without expecting anything in return. So it's like a sacrifice to reality, like a sacrifice to Devi. In temples, I know, some still make sacrifices to the gods, but I make sacrifices to the people who come to me. I have the opportunity to help them. It's a kind of mutual exchange, energies. It's a way to push through those processes that are still limiting me, to be like the original. And so when a person starts doing this, even if it's just with 100 rubles, I guarantee that after a little while, they'll pay back that 100,000 and say, okay, it's a one-way street. Because why? Because it is no longer a financial burden. Because by its nature, it approaches a source that is always full. No matter how much he shares, no matter how many pieces of himself he sends out into the space. Practical energy work, the practices that I demonstrate, they come from the outside. We have different facets. So I just talked about the aspect of matter. Well, it's all clear here. I earned the money, I gave it away. You earned more, gave away a little, and it already feels nice for both the person and you. But we still have energy. And there are people who, at this moment, they have no ability to give anything at all. Well, they messed things up so badly that it's embarrassing to give away the last shirt and even the axe. What can be done in this situation? What to do? We have energy. We have energy that, for some incredible reasons, we also hold back. We sometimes drill into our heads that we are limited, that if I give something away now, without understanding what it is, and I don't even really feel it yet, I will have less of it. And this is yet another illusion that distances us from the essence of the original. Yes, we can generate it, we can even live in such a state, and this life cannot be said to be the most successful, but it will exist. But then, how do we deal with enjoyment and pleasure in life if you're trying to lose what IQ is in your nature 24/7, endlessly? And from your self-awareness, it just seems foolish. It's just foolish to think that something could ever run out endlessly. And from your self-awareness, it just seems foolish. It's just foolish to think that something can run out. It can't run out. The world is absolutely whole. We are a part of this world integrated into this entire energetic structure. Our nature, human nature, is a flow. And such a nature does not exist for the same demons and angels. These are absolutely real beings, about whom, again, treatises, books, Puranas, and Shastras have been written. And all of that other stuff. They have their own layer of existence, they have the ability to do their own things there, but their nature is not the same as that of a human. And a human appeared, again, according to the principle of the creation of beings that we call creators, Brahmas, gods. But that doesn't diminish our possibilities, it's just what makes us different, like humans, from the same God, in that God has revealed his parts while we don't even know about their existence. And that's the whole difference. So, when a person perceives themselves only at the level of the physical body, they will fiercely defend only the physical body. This shows us the state, the society, where its spiritual component has become absolutely materialistic. Where have the values already shifted so strongly into the realm of matter that even religion starts to defend the flesh, the body? This is a moment that we too, it distances us from the original. We have not only physics, but we also have reason, consciousness, and thinking. There aren't that many devices that can perceive this. Yes, these are electromagnetic fields. Yes, you can connect an electroencephalograph to the head, you can do an MRI and see what's going on, how things are moving. But that's not at all the same as studying a strand of DNA that you can cut, file down, or stick something into. These are electromagnetic fields that are still beyond our control, although the scientific world is making attempts to take this under control. But besides that, there is also energy. It's only in the Trinity, in the unity, that we can approach the original state in terms of possibilities and abilities. I know many practitioners who neglect their bodies, thinking it's all about energy, I'm just going for the energy. Later, their bodies start to fall apart. Why does this happen? Because this is also originally part of it. It's not something like a shirt that I can just take off and move on. No, this is definitely the same part of us in which most of us. A person spends most of their time living as if they are the only one that exists, the only thing that is available, and only with time do some begin to open up more. Broad dynamic aspects. When a person neglects their physicality, the first thing a practitioner encounters is the inability to let a greater flow of energy pass through their body. And not so long ago, I noticed this wave of questions because we have now increased the load, we have now increased the intensity of the practices. And people started writing, oh, my leg is cramping. Oh, I have pain here. Oh, I'm feeling unwell. I'm feeling nauseous. It started. Why? Because with practices, we can push all of this out and release it, but the physical body starts to suffer from it. That's because the physical aspect also needs to move closer to the original state, not away from it. Because physics, it also needs to move closer to the original, not away from it. What does it mean to move closer to the original? It's about moving towards wholeness and unity. It's about getting closer to that state where there is no difference. If we have a clearly defined boundary, like here is the flesh, and here is not flesh, and I prefer to slide over here, and then that's it, all good, it's released. But in the end, you'll still be brought back to your body. You'll wake up there and say, oh, I have to pay the bills, winter is coming, and my employer is calling, asking where I've disappeared to, while I'm just sitting here in nirvana. So it will still pull us, our focus of attention will still drift away. The focus of attention is a very important process. And so if we neglect something in our lives, our focus will still be there, pulled out into what we don't want to perceive, and accordingly, this will lead to rejection, to resistance, and again, to closing off from energy. So, let me summarize all of this a bit. I'm not just saying all of this for no reason. This lays the very foundation of the practitioner's awareness. Someone already notices these processes. Some are still looking for the tips of their fingers, hands, and feet. But for both of them, there must be patterns in consciousness, there must be patterns in thinking that govern how our entire reality moves. Without this, it's like giving a sports motorcycle to someone who has spent their whole life riding a bicycle. It's just until the first turn. So when we practice, when I start with the physical, I kind of suspect just a little carefully that there are people who are like, well, okay, I'll just step out to the bathroom for a bit, I'll go while there. I don't know, I'll turn something on in parallel. Here we go, talking about energy. That's it, yeah, I relaxed. It won't work like that. We definitely work on our physicality. I just jumped up and I'm walking around here because sitting is a bit uncomfortable for me. But when we start practicing, I'll get a little chair, sit down, and relax my physical body. Yeah, then I can get up, but it will still be done. Why can people fold legs in a lotus position and sitting for hours? This again comes to me during individual consultations. People say, let's practice. And then they go, look, I can do this. And they fold their legs like that. So I look at this, I look, 5 minutes go by, and the person has already used everything. Well, what kind of practice can there be if your attention has just leaked out of you, simply leaked out and can't perceive other aspects that we have besides the physical body? So, someday, we will probably be able to follow my teacher's recommendations and take the body position that is most suitable for practical energy work. This body position is in a lotus pose with a straight back, but a straight back doesn't mean it's geometrically straight. It's more like our back is like this. It's in the sense that if we press down on the shoulders, all the tension will immediately go into the floor. So we'll be like a nail, even though the back isn't straight. So here, we shouldn't get confused. I was showing these processes in general. So this is the concept. A straight back doesn't mean that we're trying to stretch ourselves like a string by pulling on the top of our head. No, we align the back in such a way that the pressure, the physical pressure on the shoulders immediately goes down into the floor like a nail. At the same time, the back still maintains its geometry. This is the correct back, this is a straight back. And in the lotus position with a straight back and about 30 centimeters off the ground, in levitation above the floor, this is the most correct body position. If you can't do this very correct body position, don't try to be clever. It's better to nourish your body with something healthy. It will relax and be grateful to you. But you need to take a body position that doesn't distract your attention. Because apart from attention, we really have nothing else for understanding, for perception, for awareness. Let's get back to what is also important for practice. So, under no circumstances should you neglect your physicality. Under no circumstances should we neglect the fact that we live among others who are also in varying degrees of sleep. And if we start to act roughly, if we begin our dance clumsily, and at the same time our power will be high, sooner or later we will wear out our legs. To such a Mahadev who is asleep will be terrifying upon awakening. And there are real examples of such situations when a person quietly, then they pushed him to the limit, bam, he took down 7 people and then sat down because of that. So everyone feels a bit sad. So why even move in this direction? There's no need. We can move in the direction of pleasure at all levels, for which there will be no consequences. And this is also an important point. I know from my own experience that it can seem like when we enjoy and rejoice in life, then comes some kind of problem. So I got high, and the next morning you're like 1.1, as if it were being pressed in. Yes, I stumbled over this myself. I approached my teacher and said, how come we're not allowed to enjoy ourselves here? It definitely feels like a prison. We must be suffering here. What my teacher told me was to practice, and sooner or later, you will come to that realization. 6 years later, I realized I'm in a hurry. It's important to talk about this even to those who are still searching for the tips of their fingers, hands, and feet. Because it's very important. Don't be afraid to seek pleasure and enjoyment. It's important how we do it. If we do this with love, then it will multiply. Because love what awakens the fire. If we do this in all possible ways, in other states that create tension, and there are situations where just from the outside, you look at it, it's obvious that for a person, it's unclear when someone, for example, starts to ignite, they enjoy it. Everything is good. So here I am speaking, everything is great, but suddenly, for example, the light bulb starts to burn out. Yes, this spotlight is right here. You scoundrels, why did you organize everything so poorly? It's the end for me because of this sudden drop. It's like pulling a switch, trying to stop a train that will just run you over. So you're running ahead of the train, right? And then suddenly you stop. No, you won't just stop like that. It will immediately start to destroy you. And so, when a person becomes aware of these processes, when they start to understand, feel, and perceive where they ignite, relax, and spread out, they are moving towards the original. That very original, which doesn't need anything from us at all. And these ancient rituals, when they hadn't yet turned into just a cult of killers, these ancient rituals were always gifts. So I have a lot. No one is asking me for money. Well, at least I'll give some to Mahadev. For what purpose? To practice giving, to practice flowing. Yes, let's say I'm not some great yogi, but I don't know, but let's say, have the carcass of an animal that I won't eat whole. And what remains, I'll give it away initially. Well, not because I killed this animal to give it away. And I killed it so I could eat myself, but I gave part of it away. And so when a person becomes aware of this thing, so, for example, you're sitting in nature, having a picnic, and you're pouring yourself some tea from the thermos. I poured a little, spat it out, and gave it away. Who needs it? I don't know, it's the spirit there. If it's sweet tea, the ants will be happy. There are little bugs. It doesn't matter. It's all original. He's everywhere. And so you poured, splashed, and that's it. You've already performed a ritual act. You just got closer to the original, to its nature. You gave. And so when a person does this on a physical level, if there's such an opportunity, it's wonderful. When he doesn't have that opportunity, we should do it on an energetic level. Let's get back to that energy. What to do? To flow out and give, just understanding. Well, you could say believe in this, but that's how it is. It's just that the nature of a person is limitless. The very structure of the universe is inexhaustible, and we are a part of that structure. And the only thing that limits us is just our reactions. Reactions that create constraining structures, spasms, and tightness. And this is where mastery really begins. Practice, how clearly, how quickly, how sharply he can react to himself. And where will he direct his attention? If I react to a light bulb that, let's say, burns out, where am I in this process? What am I doing at that moment? At that moment, I'm generating dissatisfaction and rejection. So I don't agree that Mahadeva has a right to exist in the light bulb, to put it bluntly. But I'm really exaggerating. So, if something happens, what is identified as a stimulus? So, I had the opportunity to practice with some intensity. There's a difference, for example, between when a person is doing gymnastics and when they're doing weightlifting. And so, mainly practitioners, when they practice in the most comfortable conditions, especially during our broadcasts, when nothing distracts them, well, even if someone does distract, you can still immerse yourself, at least in my voice, and hold on. This is gymnastics, and there is life. There is daily life when my voice is no longer there, when it's already gone. So some kind of properly relaxed pose when the energy is basically you're already ready to flow, as long as you don't get in the way. And the practices. The ones we're going to do today will be shown in a slightly different way, based on slightly different principles. At least it's all still about the same thing. So, at that moment when something appears that we identify as a stimulus, that's exactly when we start practicing with some weight. This is called weightlifting begins, and not everyone, far from it, can handle this weightlifting. Just yesterday, one of the practitioners wrote to me, who solved her life problem by diving into her heart. It just vanished, that problem. And that problem, after about a year, started to come back for her. Basically, it's the same thing. It's a bit different in form, but essentially it's the same. And here she is, scared, writing to me. Anton, help me, save me. I said, you already know everything. You can do it all. I said, why are you so scared? Here's the hustle and bustle. This hustle, everything is pulling at your attention, and the brain is already generating thought. Why is she right? Even though, how can you be right in this state? Why? When she creates a problem for herself with her own hands, why did this suddenly become signs that she gives them? Some kind of there. I calmly explain to her, I say, look, here's a sequence of events. 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, I won't go into details. I said, well, look, you're the one doing all of this yourself. I said, well, what signs, what spirit? I said, well, you got all flustered, forgot something, ran out, had to go back, didn't make it in time. I said, it's just cause and effect. No, those are signs that I shouldn't have done it. I said, you had to do it. You're just scared. That's why you're sabotaging yourself. Ultimately, a person determines what will happen in their life. If he does this unconsciously, he might be tempted to shift the blame somewhere else. If he does it consciously, then the responsibility that immediately grows, maybe even his, for a while, sends someone into deep contemplation. It's one thing when you shift the responsibility off to the side, and it's a completely different thing when you don't have that option at all. It simply doesn't exist. And if a person practicing weightlifting, he is fully aware of what's happening, and even if he doesn't succeed, that awareness he has that yes, it was a barbell with that many plates on it, that, well, I just couldn't handle it today. Well, it's not a big deal. I'll practice gymnastics some more. I'll also practice with those little dumbbells. And you see, next time I'll succeed. So we don't waste time. We don't waste energy. We don't waste resources on burying ourselves. Reality buries us even without our help. Because the world is structured this way right now to permanently exert a certain pressure. That is, we already, simply by being in this space, already we're doing such light, heavy lifting just by the fact of being born here. And those people who can't cope, those who start taking all of this too seriously, they accelerate their own oblivion. They just fade away. So it doesn't really matter. What level are you at now? Sensitivity. The level of Bibas of vision, the level of energy perception. These are the basic principles. They are available to anyone, to absolutely anyone, and those people who intuitively, due to life circumstances somehow, these principles are carried within themselves and they act in accordance with them. They grow to very high levels, hierarchical peaks. These could be big businessmen, these could be state managers, corporate managers. At the same time, they might not even know that there is such a thing as energy. They just live by these principles. Here I am, at some point in time, when I was already outside the temple, I was already out of the practices, when I was just dealing with my everyday life. Well, I was basically making money, because when I left the temple, I had absolutely nothing, just zero. I decided to check what my thinking is like, how I think. Yes, I know everything. I can tell you there about Srimadagava. I can tell you about the universe, the world. So how do I think just as a part of society, as a person who needs to dress, eat, and receive benefits from other people? And this is nothing more than receiving benefits from other people. Someone sewed a shirt, someone cooked food. I still need to give him something. How do I think at this moment? I turned it on. It was a video, an interview with some billionaire, and they started asking him questions, not in terms of business, but just everyday life. And here is what is the right thing to do in such and such a situation, and how in such and such a situation. Every time he started to answer, I would pause the video and answer for him. And when it turned out that almost all the answers coincided with his thinking, then I calmed down and went on to twist the sockets on the topic. I realized that I was basically thinking in the right direction. And I think in the right direction, not only as a practitioner, but also as a person who has a very good understanding of the material world. Because if you don't understand the material world well, you won't become a billionaire in any way. Even people who, when people win the lottery, they don't start factories, They don't achieve anything significant. They mostly just spend it all and end up back in their previous state. These principles are very important. Let me repeat these principles again a little bit. That is, each of us is a Mahadev. Therefore, we do not interfere with the lives of others. We don't interfere with others solving crossword puzzles that they sit and solve with interest. And we don't jump in to write what we think is better or clearer, even if we're right 10 times over. That doesn't give us the right to interfere with them. And if we allow ourselves that kind of right, then we are likely to encounter aggression directed at us. Next, our nature is inexhaustible. So the only reason you're lacking something is that you hold yourself back. You hold yourself back, I hold myself back. And instead of spending your time, resources, and energy on blaming everything and everyone, running around reality, transferring your physical body from one state to another state and trying to find that very place where it is better, you are not better anywhere. You cannot run away from yourself. No way at all. You can't even escape from yourself in the grave. But that's a separate topic for discussion. So, you need to look for those internal blockages within yourself. Spasms, tightness, constricting structures, both on a physical level, but they're quite simple to deal with. Medicine has made an effort there, as well as on a psychological level. Again, there are psychologists, in principle, they do something. They can also do something useful. Let's also remember a bit about psychiatry, but that's already a very extreme case. Here is energy, and energy why? Why exactly her? At one point, when I was searching, I specifically focused on it because I saw how energy works. It can happen right before a person's eyes. The physical body can't change right before your eyes like energy can. Sometimes a person comes to me and says, diagnose me. I say, all right, let's diagnose you, but let's at least do it together. There, I'll say a little and you'll say a little, and so we communicate, observing the processes. There's the first center, the second center, and that's how the channels work. At first, a person gets upset because it's one thing to paint a picture in your head of how you're a god and a king. And it's a completely different thing when you're under the close scrutiny of another consciousness that won't let you lie to yourself. And at first a person gets upset, like, well, here we go. And I say, all right, let's practice a little bit. So what is practice? Yes, it's basically the same thing. It's self-diagnosis, really. And so the person starts practicing and says, hey, oh. I say, so what's the point? Was it necessary for me to diagnose you when you arrived? Why? So, should I drive some nails into your head to make you feel like you're not quite right? Just recently, we had a broadcast. That person is not here. In the hall, another woman says, my back hurts, diagnose me. Yes, we start diagnosing, oh, the pain has stopped. Who was stopping her from doing that? Why was she waiting to be diagnosed? If we just direct our attention, our consciousness already flows there. It already flows. This life-giving energy, which starts like living water, to nurture what we direct it towards. Naturally, if we direct it towards our own physical body, our own physicality awakens and starts to recover quickly. And if we direct it at the scoundrel neighbor who is drilling there, he will drill even better. He has gained more strength. This is also, by the way, one of the principles of how reality is structured. Where do we direct it? Wherever we direct our attention, that's where our consciousness flows. The fact that we have emotions, the forms that we embed, a long time ago. In the vastness of Russia, there was the DIR school, which focused on further energy information development. I also didn't avoid it. I participated there too. They issued all the diplomas that could possibly be. And there was a practice of animating objects. It's actually a good school. What they showed was really like that. The other thing is, what were they leading to? That's where the question arises. They weren't leading anywhere. They were just showing. And at some point, the knowledge just stopped. And you're like, wait, I haven't figured out how the world works yet, but the knowledge is already gone. But there was a practice of animating objects. The essence is to direct attention and start embedding forms, geometric forms, that is, to structure it all. When a person engages in the same thing, for example, with themselves or with the surrounding space, they are actually creating entities. They are creating entities that they themselves will not be happy with. The practices of revisiting these issues solve these problems, but they need to be addressed. So if I got angry at my computer being not a computer, okay? There were no computers there. The Sega game console, I got angry at it, poured my consciousness into it, and crystallized that consciousness with hatred and aggression because I didn't like it. The joystick, has anyone seen how a kid hits a joystick? I was just like that. And then, saving time, well, it all just gets thrown in the trash because it has already lost its functionality. Where is my consciousness? It got thrown in the trash. It's all stuck and crystallized over there. It's mine, I'm connected to it. And this spasm, it just hangs somewhere in space. And accordingly, it has an effect on me. Yes, we can hang such things all over the planet because we are infinite by nature. But at some point, while engaging in such things, you can realize and feel how powerless you are. And you won't be doing those things anymore. Because the more constraining structures we create around ourselves, the further we move away from our original state. We keep on sharing this. We keep on dissecting ourselves. The more we dissect ourselves, the more primitive we become. So, when I talk about love, when I talk about wholeness, when I talk about unity, it's not just for no reason. Even when I say to you, see, in another person, I'm not saying this just for the sake of it, Mahadev. So we take our attention. So who should I direct now? Here, a person is sitting with their eyes closed. He's already looking at me. He's still sitting there with his eyes closed, so I'm directing my attention to him. And I say, well, he is definitely Mahadev, but his vibe is kind of strange. Dream. At that moment, I see a person in him. I see a shape, a structure in him. And I can say, nice shirt, by the way. What will change? Yeah, I'm not investing in it. He already has spasming structures in him. I cripple, but I touch that. That is slower than my consciousness. It's the same as when I take, for example, my hands and put them in the snow. Yeah, I'll melt that snow, but the temperature of my hands will drop. When we touch with our consciousness a form, an object, a thing with any other, what does it mean, a thing? We are all made of consciousness. This is also consciousness. Every single cell in my body wants to live. It has a life cycle. She can practice, she can comprehend, she can be aware at her own little level, every single cell. But these little cells are infinitely slower than the consciousness with which I, for example, perceive energy. And so when I'm working with my body, I'm pulling it in, meaning I'm speeding it up. When I touch, for example, with the camera, there's no point in speeding it up. Why would I? But I can bypass it with my consciousness and even exert some influence on it. I'm fading away. So we start to get closer to each other in terms of speed, energy movement, and the state of consciousness. And so when you interact with other people and see a personality in them, gender, race, political, some positions, whatever they're called, it doesn't matter. So you see everything that is slower than consciousness, you yourself start to fade away. If I address a person, it doesn't matter what the purpose is, it really makes no difference. I address him in the heart, where Mahadev is manifested, where the divine is manifested, and there I connect with more fiery processes through that form he is in. And if I can connect with him, then what difference does it make whether I'm connecting with him or with myself? And then it just turns into a kind of dance. So it's about how graceful I am and how skilled I am at slipping through the forms of other people and connecting with their souls. If I do this regularly, there's no causality. Why I start to fade? A person can come to me in any state, with any illnesses, with any problems. And this person can't pull me down, can't shake me from my position. On the contrary, I will create a condition where he will start to pull himself together and open up. It doesn't matter how many problems he has, he's still Mahadev. This is Mahadev in a very deep sleep. And that's it. Right now, consultations, all that stuff, practice, that's all clear. But if you can drag this into your everyday life, and at least out of 5 taxi drivers who took you there, not there, because the navigators are constantly failing, at least in one of them, you see Mahadev. You see, this will be enough to change your tendency from a permanent fading, slow, to actually igniting. And it's this tendency that determines how much and how quickly each of you will achieve all your desires, whims, and needs. It doesn't matter, you want money for God's sake, you want debauchery, yes, as much as you want. The main thing is to break that tendency. And so if a person breaks it and holds on to that tendency, yes, you can soar or fall, but just don't lose that tendency. You can make a mistake, that's not a problem. It will be another experience, another obvious factor that will hold you back next time. There is such a word, confession. What is confession? It's when a person realizes what they did wrong, but they realize it not based on postulates. So it says here like this, I did it differently. Yeah, it doesn't match. You have to act as it's written. This is nonsense. It's complete rubbish. It doesn't work that way because the same action performed by 10 different people will lead to 10 different outcomes. The same action, so it doesn't work at all. You need to, here I'm starting to push you a bit from a state of everyday life into the state of an active person. You should have at least some kind of extrasensory perception. At least a little bit. At least a little spark that will help you navigate the nonsense of your brain. But the brain is not to blame for anything because it's a mechanism that gets programmed. It's programmed by the institutions we are born into. And just like it was programmed, that's how it will produce results. So it's a soulless mechanism. Yes, it's a very complex computer, but it's soulless. It will never give you a result that leads to enlightenment. It will produce a result based on the factors that are programmed into it. And that's why I just studied a bit to become a psychologist, so I know what I'm talking about. That's why it's such an interesting mechanism. Right now, we have light, we have sound. We have a visual image, and we have some state of yours. And for the brain, these factors are equal. And so, for example, we were in that state, and it got recorded. It won't be recorded right away. Yeah, it takes time. But once it's recorded in you, just a couple of similar situations will be enough, and you'll be able to enter that state again. You can remove me, turn on the light, and create a dimmed atmosphere. Turn on, for example, this flashlight, and you might think, oh, that's nice, like, or oh, that's interesting, but why is there no one on stage? Because our brain does equal, and they even conducted such experiments. People generally love to conduct experiments, like when a person is given the same orange. There was a film about this where they messed with the brain, so the criminal in A Clockwork Orange. It was shown there too. We conducted experiments not just in artistic films, but real experiments. By the way, based on these experiments, a huge serious structure was built called Dianetics. That's exactly what they based their practices on, which they used to lure people in. They were luring people in. That's what it was called. And in reality, it was psychoanalysis, just psychoanalysis. That's what they named it. Basically, it's a very common theme when a modern person takes something from ancient books, or from some books that everyone has already forgotten, or from such books. There's a very complex terminology in psychology that can really twist your head, especially when you're reading Vygotsky, for example. The question is how to adapt it for the modern person. It drives any specialist crazy looking at what he took from here, but since he's a specialist, it doesn't matter to him. He's focused on his own work. Any person who isn't a specialist finds something interesting and understandable, and they start to approach it. The fact that it's real was tested in an experiment where a person was shown a video, tactile sensations, and sound sensations, but they didn't actually stick a needle in him. They trained him like that for a few days. They would take 2 or 3 factors, and he felt how the needle was piercing him. He just felt it. This is how our brain works. It's not to blame, it just functions this way. So, when you were raised in an environment and certain reactions were instilled in your head, that's done by your parents. Basically, a parent can try to raise a person in any way they want, but what will be raised is what? How the parent behaves, what kind of behavior they model, what reactions they show. For example, if a mom says, you should love this little dog, that's how it goes. But it turns out like this because what is perceived by the senses is exactly that, like light, sound, and the situation. Yes, this is how it works. The child, initially, there is access to energies, and a person can initially feel them within themselves. What is the parent saying? The bill is saying something wrong. He is not finishing something. He is not finishing something. He is lying, meaning they're not sincere. But then all of this gets erased. Why? Because the role model never appears, and that's it. In theory, religion was supposed to be responsible for this, teaching people how to use their energy, explaining that the state is just a state. But there are even more serious things, but let's remember the Kali Yuga. that we're here doing this heavy lifting permanently. Creates conditions for us to break through on our own. And again, it's neither good nor bad. It's just a point in space where you break through on your own. But what is most interesting is that in the era of Kali, anyone has the right to break through. And that's the advantage. So in the past, when there were other eras, for example, the right of blood was important. If you fit by blood, great, here's your knowledge. You don't fit, you're in a different caste, and you have no chance of getting out of there. But everything is great there, the fields are blooming, bees are buzzing, and there's water in the rivers. So life is comfortable, but you can't claim the knowledge that you're not entitled to by blood. But it's nice to live there. And so we, as fragments of consciousness, won't go through the eras. They are very beautiful, very alluring. But we, as fragments of consciousness that have come here, have set these starting conditions for ourselves. It's very important to realize this for ourselves. So it's not that someone punished us or threw us here. Naturally, I've had situations in my life when, well, has anyone ever had situations in their life when they ask themselves, what the hell is going on? Why is this happening to me? I'm the same. I was absolutely the same. And I didn't find an answer to that question. I saw it in yet another one of my practices. What was the intention behind me? Before I jumped into this, what was the intention? And the intention turned out to be quite logical, very understandable. It was thought out well. Another thing is that we have free will. And even if we come up with something normally, we can step in the wrong direction. And no one will stop us. You have free will. Feel free to rewrite your entire life if you want. It doesn't matter. And there were other practitioners who also told me about what I could reach in my memory. Naturally, this memory isn't in the head. It's memory in the field. Here, right here. It's called the sixth gate. Local Akashic records. And so, when a person reached the ability to access this information, the first thing they did was calm down. So this crazy outrage to what is happening was coming to an end. Because, there it is, just as it was intended. That's what I came here for. This is the first one. And the second thing, there was a clear understanding that will is actually freedom. Because the way we envisioned it and the way it starts to take shape, it's like this sometimes, but it's us. As they say, no, it doesn't stop. We can rewrite the script of life. People often ask me about fate. If fate exists, then fate is correct. So how do we practice here in terms of claiming it, meaning we can rewrite it, but it gets written out completely right away? If what you've written out completely doesn't suit you for some reason, well, that doesn't mean we have to go through that fate to the end. It's like video movies on a hard drive. So we turned on a comedy, right? But the mood just isn't right. Let's watch a horror movie instead. We turned it off, turned on a horror movie, and there you go. It really gets you going. That's the same with life. And so when a person allows themselves to even think, not to mention act, just thinking makes it easier. It becomes calmer. Busyness is our enemy. Despair is an enemy, even more serious. Hatred. We activate the mechanisms of self-destruction. Resentments. Have you ever thought about the fact that holding a grudge against another person, or even against life in general, is much more serious than just giving someone a slap with a fist? And now let's think a little about what the mechanisms protect criminal rights. To punch someone in the face doesn't protect, that's just how it is. And it's also important to realize that the reality we are in is a world. The system is built on protection. And this completely ignores the fact that the universe will hit us on the head. Not for hitting someone in the face, but for the fact that we got offended. You see, when a person who has extrasensory abilities, you can't deceive them anymore, because I, for example, faced some negativity, some unpleasant situation. Yes, let's say I don't have the ability to understand the cause and effect relationship yet. It's not about perceiving photographs, right? But about perceiving it in the context of time. That's what matters. I remember I had this very strong attachment that I struggled to get rid of for a long time. It's when I saw an animal being sold right in front of me, especially because of a person's fault, well, I just couldn't do anything. And all of you are in the position that the world is wrong. Well, I mean, basically I was saying, Mahadev, you're not good. Well, that pushed me away even more. And Sobu realized that reality is what it is. And that even if an animal dies a violent death, well, it's not an infinite amount of time. This little piece is in this body. Well, sooner or later, she still has to come out. And still, something inside me was trying to react that way. And only when my abilities increased a bit, when I finally, through practices, through mantras, through living in the temple, my heart opened up and I began to perceive the hearts of other people. It was no longer about animals. Tears just started flowing and I couldn't do anything about it. I felt so much pain, but not physical pain. It's not physical pain, physical pain. I can endure it. An old hiker, all sorts of things have happened there. And it was such pain that you don't even know from which side to approach it, to dull it in any way. Turn away from it, to lose the ability to perceive it, and only after some more time. I suddenly realized that everything that causes me such pain is myself. I just see it in other people. Here, I see that shit in another person. I feel like I'm suffering from what I see, but it's within me. And it was only when I started to engage with energy in a more conscious, more sincere way, not from the position of, now I'll chant a mantra and a pile of money will come flying in, but from the position of wanting to be different. My existence will be different. I don't want to be a generator of constraining structures anymore. I don't want to be a bearer of constraining structures. I don't want to be a person who demands. But at the same time, he doesn't really understand how it happens. That's when I took each of my constraining structures. And I already had the ability to go not through events, meaning not through memory, but directly through the perception of the field. And I kept loosening and loosening and loosening. I stepped out into everyday life and watched how it tightened up again. I was watching what I was doing, what I was reacting to, what threw me off. Yes, there were those animals, and there were some situations with other people. There were situations in the world, global situations. I was reprogramming my reactions. So I stopped being a generator of spasms for myself. This territory, where we stop being generators of spasms, is impossible without extrasensory perception. Our brain, in its stubbornness, will say at some key moments, "You're right, that person is a scoundrel." So I did the right thing. You look at your energy, and if you're like this, then that energy can't flow, and you start to fade. You did the right thing. Now you will fade, and it turns out that when a person... We started with the fact that each of you wants some kind of blessings for yourselves. There are no problems with this. Everyone wants to fulfill their whims and needs, and there's nothing wrong with that, even if they are tabooed by society. There are other societies where these things are not taboo. It's also important to realize that among these Mahadevas, there are certain laws where we are right now. I was in Bali, and there are different societal laws there, right? They are similar to other places in India, for example, where I also lived for a while. There are different laws, and for them, it's normal. When there's a bridge, and to this bridge, buses, trucks, rickshaws to motorcycles, they just converge from all sides. There's no such concept as your own lane. It technically doesn't exist. And here, there's a little narrow path. So they all converged from all sides, and on one side, and on the other side, there's this traffic jam in our country. It's just that until a helicopter pulls them apart, movement starts there. They just slip through each other, one by one. How do they do that? Well, they do it, and for them it's normal. And when you observe all of this, you think, wow. But it turns out that it is that one, the social institution in which I was formed, is not the true final authority. And there's absolutely no reason to rely on those rules and orders that are killing you. Although this institution will force you to adhere to these rules and orders, and here, once again, only extrasensory perception will help us to reprogram our brain. On average, it takes 42 days. We spend 21 days breaking the already formed neural connections. We reset them, and then we spend another 21 days forming new connections that will allow you to react otherwise. Our brain doesn't have full control. we also have a certain consciousness. So, one way or another, one way or another, one way or another, in short, the scientific world allows for this. It can't explain it yet, but it acknowledges it, that a person has a brain. Brain. They amputated it due to the injury, and he still remembers everything. How is that possible? Well, maybe, yeah, he doesn't remember it right away. He remembers, but how can he remember that if he doesn't have that part of his brain? And there I will come up with all sorts of different theories about all this, like where she is there. How is it like a cache in a computer where it is written, rewritten, no saving? We have a field around our head, the sixth gate of the Akashic Chronicle, where is all of this information is present, where our consciousness is present when a person leaves the material form and becomes pure perception. That's the moment when you define all of this. So it's not the neural connections in your head that define you, but rather who you are. You are what you react to. If you react to the side, closeness with the original, that's where limitless possibilities open up. But if you react like that, it's the end for you. Well, just right away. Because here we at least have inertia, there's time, and there's rigidity in the structure. So I'm showing you different states, but I'm not collapsing from it. Dead. The very first impulse, the very first one, even the brain, oh, not the brain, but even the thought hasn't even formed yet, and it will immediately start to manifest. And why am I saying this? Did you tell it? For the fact that, after all, we are already quite prepared people here. Practitioners, and of course, even though 99% will go through the first gates, they'll just get stuck at a point. Some percentage of people still get the chance to make the next choice. Yes, he will lose his memory, then he will have to learn everything from scratch, but in a way, it will still be a continuation of life. But that's not it. It's what we are given by the fact of our birth. It's what a person acquires by transforming their relationship with reality. And if we can somehow manage the neural connections, then no one can handle the internal position except for the person themselves. You can't even knock that out of him. He will fall unconscious, come to, and then go back to that state again. I'll shoot you all later. I had such a situation in my memory when there was a small business related to metal recycling. And at this place was attacked, a bandit attack. And those who were there, they were my acquaintances. They weren't killed, but they were seriously injured. So they got hit on the head. And it turned out that there was a husband and wife there. They were both hurt, basically the same way. But when the wife came to after resuscitation, her position was, thank God we're alive. Her husband's position was, I remember them all, I'll get them all. And by the next evening, he passed away from a brain hemorrhage. That's how seriously a person's position can define things.
Do you want to unlock your inner strength and learn to manage energy? The course, Power of Consciousness 1. Practical energy will provide you with tools to improve health, develop intuition, and gain a deeper understanding of the world. Join and start changing your life right now. Link in the description.